one of the things that I have had in my playbook, had as a Post-it note on my computer for 2 years, is not just what if it were easy, but how easy am I willing to allow something to be?
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Unstoppable Woman podcast. I am super excited to have my guest on today. She is certainly an unstoppable woman herself. She's also one of my clients, and she's a program coach in our Spirit of Wealth program, and she's the total badass all around. Her name is Erin Marcus, and I brought her on the show because we like to do spotlights of the women who have gone through the journey to make a quantum leap. And the idea is to help you understand and to pull out some nuggets from their story, their journey of what they did, the challenges that they faced. You know, they're going to be sharing the vulnerabilities of what's happened along the way, because it's not all, as I like to say, you know, peaches and cream or unicorns and rainbows or whatever you want to say there. There's some challenges to growth, but we can make it easier. And I just love that Erin's been willing to come on to the show and share her journey. So welcome, Erin Marcus.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here. And yeah, I mean, I love sharing not the dirty underbelly, but the truth, so that people know it's not just all puppies and rainbows and unicorns, but it's all still possible.
Yes. Right. You need to hold the inspiration, but you also have to recognize that there's getting your hands dirty and digging in, and you've had a lot of that. So I always like to start with the before, like, where were you? You tell the audience a little bit about your background, because you have a background of a lot of success. You were doing your own thing, and then there was a little bit of a blip, and then we started working together and like set the frame of
the down and dirty quick version of that is my fancy title before I left corporate was Senior Vice President of Business Development for the largest long-term care insurance wholesaler in the country. And right, fancy title. So nobody outside the industry understands what that means. But what it meant was that I put regional and national relationships together for our company with banks, broker dealers, financial planning groups, and then went and trained the folks within those companies to grow their businesses. And
Right.
Then in 2012, I left that, much to the chagrin of my mother, and bought a franchise, which went really, really well. I got to the top 10 in out of 200 offices in maybe 18 months because I knew how to run a business, but it was a franchise model. I was selling something someone else created. I had 15 employees, and I hit a point where I knew it couldn't grow anymore for a variety of socioeconomic reasons. And I could kind of see the writing on the wall that this was not a good financial path, but B, a path that I wanted to follow. And through both of those situations, one of my common themes was having helped other people grow their business. I did it in corporate. I did it for the franchise once they saw my success. And I knew, because by then I had seen business coaches, that it was a much more flexible opportunity for me in terms of lifestyle. So in 2017 is when I sold, closed, dismantled a variety of things for that business. And now looking back, I now fondly, didn't feel like it in the moment, called 2018 Erin's year of failure. I mean, like nothing worked.
2018 was when you decided, I'm going to go out on my own, not do the franchise, do my own business. And you were hitting a wall.
Hitting a wall is like an understatement. It just didn't work. Everything I tried when I look back had nothing to do with me. It wasn't the right thing to do. It wasn't what I should have been focusing on. It wasn't the way I needed. Everything I knew about building a business went right out the window when I tried to make it my business instead of someone else's business.
Interesting. So do you think this was about ego, or do you think this was about, I don't know, I didn't actually know some of the key pieces of running your own business?
I think
about?
so. Honestly, I met you that summer. We didn't start working together for about a year after that, but we stayed in contact. But I met you that summer. And one of the things you said to me when I met you at another event, we were chatting because I was so frustrated. I was closing $3 million deals in my corporate world. I was doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in business in an industry other people could barely squeak by on. And I couldn't do this. And what you said to me then, just as we were chatting at the event, was, how come you can do it for someone else, but you can't do it for yourself? Meaning those sales, meaning,
Yeah.
Right? That's what you said, think about that. And I think that's a lot of what it was. That once it was Erin's flag in the sand, right? Once it was my shingle, then all of the insecurities, all of the confusion, because for me, the journey has been so much about who you're being. I have an MBA in marketing and leader. I know how to grow a business, the tactics. But if you can't be the person to do the plan doesn't matter.
Right. So you really latched on to the teaching that we do in the Spirit of Wealth and all the coaching around how to change your self-image, how to change your identity, so that you're no longer stuck with an old self-image, an old identity that says you can only be so much. And it sounds a little like ambiguous, but it really, like, this is what I do with all my clients, and it's what creates the breakthrough. Because for many women, they're just like you. I mean, they might not have the same exact experience, but they're tactically knowledgeable. Like you have an MBA in marketing, you know how to do business for someone else. But when it came to what happens if they reject me? Right? What happens if I show up and I'm visible in my business and someone says boo to me? What does that mean? And how do I become a person for whom, I can still be compassionate, loving, open, supportive, all of those things, but also not let someone else's response or reaction or money story or freak out affect your sense of self? So with that as the context, can you give the audience some concrete, because it is ambiguous sometimes, like that sounds good, but what does that really look like on the ground? A specific way that showed up in your business that had a direct effect on your bottom line.
I knew in the back of my mind that I could do what I was claiming I could do for people. But I couldn't bring myself to charge for it. I was so busy giving it away, right? Giving so much of it away because I needed to prove, the insecurity, that you're worth charging for what you know, and instead you just give it all away for free so that you never have to ask the question, will you pay for me? And it was, I think one of the things that made it harder was all the corporate success, because how come I could easily sell something in a framework that existed of a company, and yet I couldn't charge? I mean, I had a great career. I could walk into the room and knew everybody and had all the confidence, and all of a sudden it was gone. So you feel there's this dual problem of feeling like the rug's been pulled out from under you because you didn't see that coming. And then at the same time, it affected my bottom line because I was underpricing. I was avoiding a sales conversation. I was giving everything away to prove to myself that I knew what I was talking about and just never getting to a sales conversation. So we can't pick one way it showed up and affected my bottom line, because it showed up in every way.
Absolutely. It's such a key thing. I mean, this is, when I teach sales and we did a lot of work on sales, there's a strategy, there's tactical things. For me, it's all about asking the right questions and really listening to make sure it's a good fit. But that's a strategy, right? It's not manipulation, but you need to know what kinds of questions to ask. And then you have to be someone who actually asks those questions with that energy behind the questions of support. I can help you, impression of increase. This is a win, and be so confident in who you are and what you deliver that people magnetically want to work with you. Like it's not such a hard sell when you're selling something that is oftentimes intangible, like business coaching, right? So,
and I thought I was doing that, and I was doing that to some extent in sales, in business. But the other thing that would, in my corporate experiences, but the other thing that would mess it all up for me was the approach. And it's like I knew this in my head, but before I could actually act on it, the approach that you learn to be successful in corporate kind of kills you as an entrepreneur. That headstrong, especially because I was in such a male dominated field. It was just go harder, be more direct, go harder.
Right. And here's the nuance that I think people, especially women, need to hear and really have it drop in. It's not, okay, well, I don't need to do that. I'm not gonna go put the work ethic in, put the hours in. I'm gonna stare at my belly button and like imagine the money coming in. Now, I'm all for visualization, and I'm all for using the power of your imagination, because it's one of your 5 mental faculties that really, 6 mental faculties, excuse me, that really like help you actualize. But that is not at the in absence of putting in the effort. But if hard work is your only tactic, that doesn't work. So let's go to the after story here, Erin. Sure. So you've done, and you still do, just like me, a ton of work on changing your identity, moving through the blocks, and really seeing what aspect of your self-image has to change. You've been in the process of doing that for what, a year and a half now, something like that?
It's just over 2 years. Just over, because
okay.
Yeah, just over 2 years.
So what's gotten to happen as a result of that? Like, give people the tangible result so that they don't think it's just fluff.
It's just fluff. It is so not just fluff. The tangible result is, the pure number. So 2018 was Erin's year of failure. I made $11,000. I don't even know, looking back, how I made $11,000, right? It was that bad. I'm like, I don't even know how what did I even sell that got me that much money?
Can we pause there for a second? Because this is a big deal for people who move from corporate to working for themselves. Most people get stuck in Erin's year of failure and go back to corporate. Okay, just simply because this is a thing, you guys. You're not alone in this. Erin wasn't alone in this. She thought she was alone in this, but she isn't.
Felt like it.
It felt like it. But that's where most people make a U-turn. If this is you have a decision in front of you. You need to either figure out how to change this. We've talked a little bit about how to do this. Okay. And there's a methodology to it. It's not magic. Okay. It's not woo. There's a methodology to it. Or don't do that and turn around and go right back to corporate where you are successful. There's no shame in that. Okay. If you hate that, if that's abhorrent to you, if that is unacceptable to you, then you have to choose option A, which is figuring out how to do it differently. And that's what I love to teach. But like, know that you have the choice. You don't have to suffer. You can go back to corporate and feel extraordinarily proud because that's your lane and that's what you're successful at. Okay.
And I knew I could have gotten a job. At that point, I could have still made one phone call and I left. It wasn't just leaving corporate. It was leaving 6 figures plus an expense account. And now I'm making $11,000.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
it's a bit of a shock, right? But instead of giving up, I just was trying to take all the information I was getting from what wasn't working. And now I realize I did that to figure out what should I actually be doing. So there was two sides to it. Number one, what was the data I was getting about what I was trying to do that wasn't working as far as what I was offering and what was be a better business for me.
So that's business model.
So that's the business model. And then the other piece was, how was I thinking about everything? And so in 2019, I really didn't figure out the new business model came about in, I think it was like April of 2019. Actually, that was when I got my first paying client in Conquer Your Business.
Okay.
I don't know that it was called Conquer Your Business until maybe June or July, but in what is now Conquer Your Business. And so I made $60,000 in 2019. And it's when I started working with you, it's when I started learning, because this was completely new to me, the laws of success. Like, I had no frame of reference for this. I was trying to read about it on my own. And even with a journalism degree, didn't understand the words as they were strung together. Like, I could read individually, I know the definitions of these words, but I don't understand what they're talking about.
Absolutely. So let me make a little commentary on that. First, $60,000 from 11,000, you 6 times your income. Okay. Like that's not insignificant. I know she was just starting at a very low 11,000, but it's still, she did something that, like she did a monster leap for where she was at. Okay. Not compared to corporate, but compared to where she was at in that first year. And then the second thing that I want to acknowledge is that there was something in the truth in what you were hearing me talk about in terms of universal laws and laws of success. I use those terms interchangeably, that hit a level of truth with you, even though at the time before we started working, you had a little bit of knowledge about it, but before we started working together, it was like mumbo jumbo to you. And this is because, well, I'm projecting here in conjecture, but I think this is because you're a very left brain logic based person, and that has really been a tool for you. It's where you've gotten a lot of your past success from, and gotten you to where you wanted to get to in the past, but it wasn't getting you further, and you knew there was something in this.
Something wasn't there, right?
Yeah. So before you go on with your journey, can we do a little tangent here, a little windy road down that path of, do you remember in the beginning, like, what was it that sparked your interest around the universal laws and the laws of success that made you, even though you were confused by them, made you think, I need to pursue this? Was it simply because I held space for them and I was like, you have to learn these, or was there like a truth in there that you hooked onto?
I think it was two things. I think number one had to do with what I saw you doing. So I knew a little bit about your backstory. I knew a little bit about your corporate success. I knew enough to know, okay, this is someone who's been where I've been and is on her way to where I want to go, but she's way ahead of me in that journey. And I watched you do some things in that year where we were just connected that I couldn't do, where you were showing up consistently and I wasn't, where you were doing things even when it felt like nobody was watching and I wasn't, where you were trying different things to see how they worked and I was still being more timid, which is not my normal, but was at that point. So there was that side of it. And then the other side of it was my thought process around religion, which I'm not a God person. I'm not a organized religion person, but I do have a spiritual aspect. So I've always known and have been not on an active search, but I've always known there was a way we were connected. There was a way that energy was connected. I'm very much in the natural world as far as my work with wildlife and being out in nature. And that's how I make sense of the world. And the talking about what I was hearing about universe, the bits and pieces that I could make heads or tails of seemed to have aligned with what I was instinctively feeling, but not knowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it. And for me, I use the word God now, having been brought up in a completely non-religious upbringing. And that I've embraced that because I don't participate in a religious practice, but I participate in a spiritual practice. And that word has come to mean something to me that makes sense. But I also understand that there are many people for whom that word triggers them. So for some people, it's like, that is my word, right? They've grown up with the love of God and religion, and they tap into the way I speak about this. But for other people, it's like, what the heck are you talking about? So I talk about spirituality and spirit and source and universe and all the energy that is, and infinite intelligence. And I know you've been challenged with that over time, but you have been able to make it your own, which is really powerful.
Because I'm not triggered by organized religion. It's more like I so don't get it that it's blank for me. It's not, that's great. If that's what I know, my boyfriend used to go to church every week. My brother is married to someone, his kids go to Catholic school, they go to church every week. So it's not like it's a bother, I'm not triggered and it's not bothersome, but it also did nothing for me.
Yeah.
So finding that middle ground.
Yeah. Powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. So like finish the journey. So that year you get to 60K. What's next?
What's next is, we were working privately, but joining the Spirit of Wealth, where I was now like, all right, let's learn this. And that first, that first January, wherever we were, who remembers at this point, it was cold. It was Santa Fe. Yes, that's where we were. To hear the teachings about this, and I think one of the smart things I did in retrospect, because this is the way I do things, so it worked out well in this case. It was an amazing retreat, and I had my eyes open to so many things, but being a novice, and this is what as a program coach, this is what I try to help people just entering your program do. Instead of choosing to go, oh my God, there's so much information here, I picked one thing. I literally picked one law, and I was going to study that one law until I felt it was intrinsic for my thinking.
Such a good strategy. Which law did you pick?
I picked Law of Relativity. What stories am I telling myself?
Yeah, absolutely. What meaning are you ascribing to this situation? And from what perspective do you believe that is the just, the right, the only perspective? And how could it be? Law of Relativity says nothing is big or small, good or bad, until you make it so by comparing it to something else. What are you comparing it to? Okay.
It helped me get rid of the I suck mentality.
Yeah. Huge.
Which was where I still was at, because I wasn't instantly hitting the success that had always come so easy to me in so many different places.
And if you keep saying to yourself, I suck, or in this case, like, I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I used to be. I'm not where I used to be. This is how you're comparing yourself, right? This is what you're saying the relative yardstick is, instead of recognizing it's a totally different game, right? And comparing yourself to where you were yesterday, right? Like, have I grown? What's my win today, right? We do so much on
the wins.
The wins, and what's my win today? Because as an entrepreneur, you always want more, right? Like, I just had, I'm going off on a little story here, but I just had a leadership meeting yesterday with my team, and we start off with wins each time. And, I put my wins down, Michelle puts her wins down, Tiffany puts her wins down, Amy puts her wins down, all of that sort of stuff. And Tiffany, I was reading out the wins, and we were like acknowledging, and Tiffany made a comment about how quickly we had done, like one of the wins was we went from idea to execution and implementation and being done on something in like 5 days flat. Okay. And I was like, oh yeah, we did that. I was on to the freaking next thing. Right. And I hadn't taken that moment to really acknowledge, look at what a badass team we have. Look at how agile we are and how we can implement so quickly, and how we've, we got this done. And so that this idea of what you're comparing it to use law of relativity, to use this as a teaching point, if you're always comparing where you're at right now to everything that needs to get done, all the stuff that you want to accomplish versus what you have accomplished, you're going to feel lesser than.
You feel like a constant failure.
Yes.
Because you never get there.
Correct. And there's this fine harmony between a certain amount of urgency and motivation from, I've got some big goals that I'm behind on that I need to execute on, and acknowledgement of, we're slaying, just stay the course, keep consistent, go forward, let's do this. And that, again, this is law of relativity. What's your perspective going to be, and how can you fine tune that? So I love that. I love that. And have you picked different laws on?
Yeah. So I think the second law, so that was the beginning of 2020. And, to fast forward for people as far as what the outcome of 2020 was in about December 15th of 2020, I figured out I was $92 shy of doubling my income.
Woohoo!
And that was not going to be okay. So I went and sold a ticket to an event so that I was having in January. So because that was just way too close.
Did you hear that, guys? 2 things, 3 things probably. 1, she's tracking her numbers. Like I teach my clients, make love to your numbers. Like, and that means so many different things, but know where you stand so that you don't wake up on January 5th and go, I was $92 freaking away from doubling. That would have been unacceptable. Okay. 2, she found that unacceptable. Like she wasn't going to be like, oh, $92, I got there. No, she had she knows like what done is. Okay. She knows what her goals are and what done is. And she's holding a standard for herself. And then she got creative and did one small sale and got over the line, making her like an unstoppable person. And when you keep your commitments to yourself, you create an impression in your subconscious mind of someone who does that, and it becomes easier and easier and easier as you go forward if you keep your commitments to yourself. And these are daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, right? And she had the metrics to know she wasn't going to make it, and she had the wherewithal to be, I am someone who's going to keep her commitment, and she did it. So booyah, love that.
And the other thing I picked up, I think this was next, because I have like a couple page cheat sheet. Well, 2 other things happened that I put together and really focused on that year. One of the things was when we did an exercise about using your imagination to remember, how do you say it? To remember in advance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that exercise really helped me, because what I did was I created what became a vision. And I'd always told myself this story that I can't hold a 5-year vision, too much changes, obviously just a story, whatever. But when we did the remember in advance, I got out of my way in that tactic, how am I going to do it? And created a vision of who is the person who has the $500,000 business, et cetera, et cetera. And now I use that as a checklist every day. It's a checklist. What does that person do?
Is this from your creation playbook?
Yes,
Yeah.
I added it to the creation playbook. Yeah. And the other piece that came in big in 2020 was the law of sacrifice.
Yeah. How did you use that? That's a big one for people. People freak out with the law of sacrifice. They think that they're going to have to sacrifice their firstborn and do emotionally horrible things.
No, and right. And instead of embracing how freaking exciting it really is, because I I print out my playbook every month. I update it, I print it out, and I write all over it so that by the end of the month, it's like a hot mess, right? But what that does for me is it allows me to catch the nuances in the language that aren't being as clear as I want them to be, that aren't being quite the effect that I want them to have. And you don't pick that up all at once. And I personally don't pick it up digitally. So I need it in.
Absolutely. So a couple points on that. For those of you who have no idea what we're talking about in terms of the creation playbook, I'm not pitching this program, but I want you to have context. It's one of the foundational pieces in the Spirit of Wealth program that we have, and it helps you not only change your belief structure and change your self-image and identity, but really clarify your goals for the year and break them down into 30, 60, 90-day goals and habits. And it's a whole methodology for, I'm going to pause this because my dog is barking. Well, hey,
the cat's in the bathroom on this end. If your dog's barking, my dog's sleeping. We'll see what happens.
The groceries have been delivered is what that means. Okay. For everyone in podcast land, that's what that noise is. But anyways, that's the context of what we're talking about. And then the second thing that I want to pull out from something specific that Erin said is that it's an iterative process. It's not one and done. Yes, we create a playbook and build on it every month. So it's clarified, done. You have things really clear for yourself. But as you move through, you are growing every day and your level of awareness is growing every day. So you want to recognize where something is outdated, and it might change in a split freaking second for you when a new awareness drops in, and you have to do that iteration.
And some of it really is amazingly split second, because I laugh now as I'm cleaning things up and I look at what my law of sacrifice or my different things that I'm focusing on were a year ago, even 3 months ago. And now I look at it and go, why did I have that in there? Because it so doesn't even land.
Yeah, it's gone now.
It's just gone.
You've evolved so much so quickly.
And so that was another one that I picked up on, really about doing things that don't serve me in a variety of different ways to replace them with things that serve the outcome.
Great.
And so that's what that was probably the big focus. And for me, you know, again, that corporate background where it did help me is I was very excited when I saw the playbook, because a corporate version of the goals part is how I've been functioning for 20 years. Yeah. So to add the mindset work in the same framework as the tactical effort just made so much sense to me.
Totally. So a couple things there. In your description of the law of sacrifice and how you were using it, you're also using the law of cause and effect at the same time concurrently. And this is such an important piece when people study the laws and apply them, that we speak of them separately so that we can have some structure but they all ultimately work together as a matrix, as one law, really. And that law of cause and effect, in order to know what to sacrifice, you need to back engineer, if you will, like, what are the causes that I need to put into effect? And these causes are giving me this result, and this is not the result I want. So I'm going to excise those causes and fill them with something else. So there's that. So as a result of that, I have lots of things to talk to you about. But let's keep with this journey piece, which is, you know, as a result of doing that, what has gotten to happen for you in 2021 now?
So in 2021, I think now.
So 2020, you ended at 120 a year. So from 11K to 60K to 120. Okay.
Yeah. So it feels now that so much of it is just coming together so much more quickly, to the point where I had to take a moment and not be disappointed, because in the beginning, at the first retreat, this was so mind-blowing that by my third retreat, I was sad that it wasn't mind-blowing until I realized that that was part of the problem I was always having, was everything needed to be a big deal in order to be a big deal, right? And it was like, no, just be grateful for the fact that I've now I can handle talking about several of the laws together. How do they come together? Um, Without having to like look words up in the dictionary type of problem, right? Like, oh, okay, got it. And when things drop in, and you are going to laugh at me on this one, because this was one of those like, all right, Erin, really, it took you this long to figure this out. But it's true, like, there's so much noise that some things don't drop in as easily as they do once there's less noise. And so law of polarity was what I focused on this past January. And I remember you said it, and I'm like, yeah, I don't get that one. I just don't get that one. I don't get that one. I'd ignored it because I didn't get it. And you kind of like literally one or two words different in how you talked about it. And like, all right, I got that one now.
So let me just pause you there. I'm sure I said basically the same thing. You are at a different level of awareness. Okay. And this is a big freaking deal. You see things. It's one of the things I teach at the summit. You've seen that picture of like going up the elevator in the building, and you see like what you see from the ground level and what you see from the 5th floor are totally different. And when you go from the 5th floor to the 10th floor, you can now see past those other small buildings, and you can see the ocean in the distance. And when you go up to the 20th floor, you can see the island in the ocean in the distance, right? And when you go up even higher, you can connect to the freaking world, okay? And so that analogy, like there's no top floor, okay? And what Erin has done and is walking the talk on is she keeps coming back and iterating. So now she sees something differently, and it drops in an instant, and you're closing the gap faster on that.
So the funny thing, like how you're talking about how once you have the base, and that's kind of just how I think about it. I created the base. I did the work to create the base. Like in 2019, for that second half of the year where I was working with you a little bit, it was an introduction. And 2020 was really this base of knowledge, right? And this year, that base allows me to move more quickly as things drop in. And so I just came to be with you for a living room session. And now I just look for one nugget. What's my one takeaway? What's my one takeaway? Because at this point, one takeaway can make a really big difference. I mean, one takeaway can always make a really big difference. But one of the things that I have had in my playbook, had as a post-it note on my computer for 2 years, is not just what if it were easy, but how easy am I willing to allow something to be? But here's the problem. Here's the problem. I never knew what the heck I was talking about. For 2 years, I have been waiting for a task to make things easier.
A task?
Yes. And seriously, like, as we were sitting outside and talking, I'm like, Erin, you know, I'm a little brutal with my language sometimes. Like, okay, we'll just say, Erin, you dork, which was not what came out of my mouth in my own head. And this is my new post-it note on my computer right now. Easy is a perception, not a task.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. This is the change your attitude, change your perspective, right? Like it's not, it's like, is the monkey on my back, or am I going for it? Am I choosing this? Is this what I choose? Is this what I love? All of this. And
I have been so busy trying. Isn't that crazy? I have been so busy
creating more work
to try to make things easier.
Oh, geez.
When it just dropped in differently.
I love it.
And I went through my playbook, and everything in there about it being easy had to do with it in the future.
Oh, Great nugget though, right?
Right? Like,
And let me break that down for the audience, because they might not get the implication there. They might, but like when you're seeing something as happening in the future is always the future. You never get there. You never arrive. So you have to put things in the present now, not later. Okay, please continue.
and that it's just a thought, not a thing to do better.
Yeah, it's not,
'Cause, you know,
it's not a task. It's not a checkbox on the to-do list. It's the how you're doing it. And the thing that changes how you're doing it is who you're being. Okay, so that's a huge evolution there. Really great. So what's happened financially so far for you?
so I am now on track to, well, here's the deal. It is September. I am on track to double again, which is now, last year at 120 was not past my corporate salary. But 240 will be.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, there's not really a reason to not hit the 300 stretch goal. There really isn't a reason to not. There's plenty of time. I have the ideas. I now get how it's easy. And here's the other thing, that to put this full circle for people, one of my big challenges that I'm still always up against is making myself wrong. Right? How can I make myself wrong? And what, you know, that I'm doing it wrong, and that was my approach to trying to make things easy. I must be doing it wrong if it's not easy.
And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy then.
Yes. And we've been talking tangibles and we've been talking money, but and it is a tangible. I'm not going to say it's not tangible, because it is a tangible. I don't get mad. I don't get triggered. I don't get angry. I don't get frustrated. I might be confused for a second because that's my subconscious trying to stop me, but I'm just so much calmer. I'm not all.
Erin, it gets easier and easier. Okay. Now that's not the case for everyone. There are people who are multimillionaires and, have, multiple millions turning over in their business where it's not easy. Okay. Where it feels like there's a monkey on their back and it's just sheer will.
That's not who I wanted to be in my business.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I already did that in corporate. I could have stayed in corporate and made a lot of money if I wanted to be that person.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I freaking love it. So what has surprised you the most about this journey?
I think some of the surprises have been around, that it's so much, and I've said it for so long, that it really is who you need to be. Because I've been such a heavy action taker, such a heavy tactic person. In the beginning, it felt very intangible. And how in the world could a quantum leap be based on something so intangible?
And yet doubling, going from 60 to 120, that's a quantum leap. Going from 120 to 240, or even 300, 300, even 240, quantum leap. And even going from 11 to 60, I get that you were starting at a very low, baseline there. It's still for that level, that's a quantum leap. So let's dive in there a little bit, because I often get confused out there in the world as a life coach. Okay, it's one of my bugaboos. It drives me crazy because I go in and I work on people's business models and I dive in on exactly, like, this is the new cause you need to put in effect, and here's how you need to grow your team and all that sort of stuff. So we've been doing a lot of conversation about the who you need to be part, which is so essential. Okay, which is 80%. Inner game is 80%. Okay, but can you talk about some of you're very good in and of yourself on your own around looking at how to grow and scale a business. Okay. But what are some of the things as part of the work we've done that have shifted how you approach that maybe?
I think the complication, I think one of the big takeaways from a business side, because I have a big marketing background, because I have a big corporate background, how do you what's the most direct path to the outcome?
Yeah.
Not what is, not that there's not time for, I don't even want to say complicated, but not that there's not the right time for multiple step situations, but that it doesn't always have to be that way, that there's just as many direct opportunities that we look past. And that for me, that goes back to, the whole hard work. So if it's worth it, it must be complicated. If it's worth it, it must be hard.
Yeah. So the simplification of the model. Yeah. I love that. That. What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? Sticking with it. And from a tangible side, I have been on occasion, I know your quantum leap story of going from 130 to 700. And I have, of course, made myself wrong by not having done that, right? But at the same time, in the business I'm in, to make $60,000 in your first 8 months is virtually unheard of. And to continue to double that 2 times and then is virtually unheard of. And not staying stuck. One of the biggest compliments, and I received it from a different mentor, but then you've iterated it in other ways. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is how coachable I am.
Yes, that's a huge piece, because here's the thing that I see a lot of super smart women like get in trouble with. It's like, I know this already. I got it. I understand. Well, if you got it, you got the result you want. And that was my big wake up call. Like, I thought I was all that and more, and was flipping my hair back and, all of that. And when I started my, equivalent journey, I was like, I am going to be 100% coachable. And I still am. I still get I am part of a high level, these, and they're mostly dudes. I have to say, I'm one of a few women in this, but they're like making hundreds of millions of dollars, $40 million, $20 million, $60 million, a year. And I get on these calls and we mastermind, and they're like, sweetheart. They don't never call me sweetheart. Okay. They're all incredibly great guys. But this is how it works. And I am 100% coachable. And one of the tricks, which I think you do pretty well, and it's not a trick, it's a way of being, okay? But you could call it a secret to success, because many people do not do this, but I don't hold back, you guys. I share it on, I think, every single podcast, okay? I make quick decisions. So I was on a quick coffee get together over Zoom yesterday, and they were asking me about what was going on with a certain something in my business, and there was like a vote, right? And it was like, this is how you do it. And I was like, okay, done. It's done. And within a half an hour of getting off that call, it was done. I put that in motion, and it, someone else would have taken, I can't look at that for another few weeks, or it needs to have this kind of evaluation. And I was like, actually, 6 of the brightest people I know just all agreed, I'm not going to think I'm all that and more. And I've been doing that for years. I look to people who have done what I want to do, just as you said you did with me, right? And I followed their advice. I don't turn off my critical thinking, but I turn off I have to know in advance. I have to be already there. That, if I was already there, I'd already be there, but I'm not. So what do they know that I don't know? Let's execute on that.
Well, and the other thing that you do, the other half of that, and that it's been pointed out to me that I also do, and Piper, who we know, used a really cute way of saying this. I use my business as a laboratory.
Yeah.
So when I make quick decisions, because one, I know that I'm going to do the work so that it works, make the decision and make the decision right. But also, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I will learn something if it doesn't work, and I will fix something if it doesn't work.
Do you think you were born/brought up with that trait, or did you learn that more recently in business?
I think for me, yes, I have parents, and yes, they gave me a house. So this is not like going down the poor parent path. I'm a child of the 80s. I have been working 4 days a week since I was 13 years old. Nobody taught me how to survive. I was always expected to. And what that's done for me is given me the confidence to know I will never not be okay.
Right.
It's not an option. It just doesn't happen. And that gives me a little bit of bravery that I know there's no like, oh my God, we're all going to die version of this, because I'll never get that far.
Yeah. You're willing to take the risk because you know that you're resilient and that you'll always, come through. And to your point, you called that your year of failure at the beginning of the show, but really that was your year of temporary defeat, because failure is only, I'm
Right.
playing words here, but failure is only failure if you quit, and you're not a quitter, which brings me to my last question. Okay. But first, before we go to the last question, tell our audience where they can find you and how to connect with you on social and all those good things.
Awesome. So Erin Marcus, I promise I'm not hiding. The other Erin Marcus is a doctor, so that one's not me. Conquer Your Business is the name of my business. So it's Erin at conqueryourbusiness.com. And on Facebook and LinkedIn, it's all Erin Marcus, Conquer Your Business. I promise I'm not hiding.
Okay, great. I love it. So what makes you an unstoppable woman? That is my last question that I always ask people.
I just don't give up. I just really don't give up. Going back to the first time you and I had a private coaching session and you sent me a survey and there was 800 questions to answer, right? And the last question was, what if this doesn't work? I looked at it and I'm like, I don't understand the question. What do you mean? What if it doesn't work? You just keep trying until it works.
Yeah. That question, and they're not 800 questions.
I felt like it at the time. I'm like, I don't know these things. That's where I was at.
Right. You were a little challenged by answering a handful of questions, but there were not 800 questions. But that last question is like, when everything appears to be falling apart, what makes, prove to me that you're going to do the course, right? Because the truth is that it's going to look like things are falling apart because you are going from where you were to where you need to be. And you don't yet have the perspective, identity, self-image of that woman at the level that you need to be at. And so you're seeing everything as falling apart, but it's really just growth.
I could never have done what I've done in the last 2.5 years, if 2018 hadn't been what it was.
Yeah. And you wouldn't have had enough leverage over yourself.
I wouldn't have had enough knowledge or information and drive and fed upness to make a totally different way of being.
Yeah, I freaking love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I want to reflect that you are, and I started off the show this way, totally unstoppable, complete badass. She's gone through so many terror barriers and challenges and all sorts of things. And in this show, in our conversation here, you've been really vulnerable and open about what that actually looks like on the ground, because it's not for the faint of heart. And you really shared some powerful lessons. And I hope everyone listening takes away a ton of nuggets and is super, super appreciative of this amazing woman, Erin. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey there. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed that episode. If you're ready to take it to the next level and want to make your income breakthrough, then I am personally inviting you to join us at the Unstoppable Woman Income Breakthrough Summit. It is happening November 5th, 6th, and 7th. And I would love to have you there, especially if you're someone who is high achiever, but hitting a block. I want to show you how to master your marketing, master your mindset, and master scaling your business and growing it to the next level. This is a 3-day immersive event. I will be the only one teaching you, and you'll get me for 3 full days. This is the place that people make their breakthrough, and I would hate for you to miss it, and I would love for you to be there. So please check it out at joinamiralive.com, and I'll see you there.